It was an everyday scene in the Suffolk countryside. A bright August sun shining on a land of low hillocks and copses. The trees heavy with the green leaves of late summer. At this isolated spot, a mile and a half north of the nearest village, Lakenheath, there was little to disturb the silence apart from the occasional deep boom of a jet landing or taking off from the adjacent airbase. In the quiet earth track leading up to the 12-foot-high wire fence shielding the military property, the only movement to be seen were the walking figures of local gamekeeper Keith Pryor and his friends Adrian Lawrence and Helen Sawyer, who were treading the bank of the roadway a few yards from a pheasant pen. Keith had parked his four-wheel drive Isuzu where the track, called Common Drove, ran between two rows of beech trees and entered a wooded area known as the Car. At this point, around 12:30 p.m. on Saturday, August 17th, 2002, the trio were wading through the overgrown verge 600 yards from where Common Drove joined the partially tarmac road to the hamlet of Wangford. The trees, the sunshine, the sound of the 600 fledgling pheasants cheeping softly in the wood, there was nothing to suggest that the scene of pastoral peace was about to be ruptured by the most unimaginable horror. Nothing, that is, except for the strange, terrible smell which seemed to emanate from somewhere in the ditch. Keith was used to the odours of the countryside, but there was something unusual about the pungent, sickening stench he had noticed in this area over the past few days. It was so distinctively unpleasant that he and his companions had decided to find out what was causing it. They thought perhaps a farmer had dumped manure in the woods, or maybe a dead sheep. In their darkest nightmares, they could not have imagined the truth. Suddenly, Adrian, who was leading the party, gave a shout. He turned, his face white with shock, and yelled to his girlfriend, "Don't come any further, Helen. Get back in the van." Keith approached and peered into the ditch. What happened next was to stay fixed in his memory, probably forever. Scanning the damp soil in the bottom of the 5-foot-deep cutting, he could see there was a strange object lying there. For a split second, he could not make out what it was. Then the shapes leapt into focus. He could make out the outline of what could only be a body, covered in a shallow coating of grime. It was a body so small and fragile it had to be that of a child. It was badly disfigured, blackened and burnt to the point where the tiny skeleton was showing through the charred remains of the flesh. And lying next to it was another, equally pitiful, equally blackened figure. They were barely recognizable as human. They had been placed carefully side by side. As police officers would later relate with revulsion and astonishment, it appeared as if whoever had put them there had taken meticulous pains to destroy them. Their flesh had been burnt to the point where they had become, in the words of pathologist Dr. Nat Carey, partially skeletonized.